Climbing mountains is a very dangerous sport. The number one danger of mountain climbing is a lack of awareness and preparation. High altitudes can certainly lead to altitude sickness, and elevations that are higher than 26,000 feet are called death zones. A person climbing such heights is at risk of getting long-term brain damage. What happens at high altitudes? Since oxygen levels at high altitudes are very low, it leads to a lack of oxygen in the body. This results in altitude sickness. Altitude sickness can start occurring as we approach 8,000 feet, 2,500 meters. Prolonged periods of oxygen deprivation kills the neurons, brain cells, and other cells, leads to long-term brain damage. Carrying oxygen masks is very important if you're planning to climb a summit. There are many climbers who have died attempting to climb mountains like Everest without oxygen masks. How important is it to carry oxygen masks? At high altitudes, the partial pressure of oxygen is less than that of the ground level, which decreases the concentration of oxygen in the blood and tissues. The low oxygen in the blood causes the climbers to become weak, and gradually they stop thinking clearly and they suffer from anoxia. This is why carrying enough oxygen is one of the most important aspects of climbing. Mount Everest is the largest summit to have been conquered by man. Its harsh weather conditions and high altitudes make the advent of climbing it nearly impossible. And numerous people have died climbing Everest, and many of them due to the lack of oxygen at deliriously high altitudes. Dr. Melanie Windridge, a physicist and mountaineer, highlights the science that gets her to the summit of Mount Everest. According to her, oxygen is hugely important for the safety on Everest. She visited the Royal Geographical Society to see the oxygen sets that were taken up in the expedition in 1953. She talks to Neil Greenwood of Summit Oxygen about the oxygen sets that are currently in use on the mountain. The old oxygen system that was used in 1953 is a complete system. It contains 2 cylinders and all the regulators, the delivery mechanism, and the face mask, which is heavier than what we currently use. It also has the problem where one cylinder runs out. You have to switch to the other cylinder and try to replace one, which needs high efforts. The modern system only has one regulator, which is interchangeable between a cylinder. According to Neil Greenwood, the new oxygen system has an easier mechanism. A climber can carry one or a number of cylinders at a time. The regulators on these systems are significantly smaller and lighter than the regulators in the past. Even the masks are more comfortable to wear. These developments on the mask have improved the system in terms of efficiency, and the development on the cylinder and the regulator have made the whole system lighter. On the mountain, above 7,000 meters, the modern oxygen systems not only prevent from succumbing to life-threatening altitude sickness, they also improve performance. With the help of oxygen, the climbers can move faster, allowing them to spend less time in the death zone. Oxygen at altitude is not like scuba tanks while diving. You won't die if you take your oxygen mask off. You'll just be a little out of breath. Altitude sickness usually takes several hours to develop. Women particularly benefit from oxygen because they're smaller. Their smaller body weight means that the same amount of oxygen has a greater effect than on larger males. Have people climbed Everest without oxygen masks? The answer is yes. Only the superb physical specimens of the strongest climbers in the world can achieve this feat. Most of these oxygen-free ascents are by the Sherpas. Sherpas are renowned in their international climbing and mountaineering community for their hardiness and expertise. They have high experience at very high altitudes. It's believed that their climbing ability is a result of a genetic adaptation to living in high altitudes. How high can you climb before you need oxygen? Most people agree that supplemental oxygen should be used at the death zone of 26,000 feet or 8,000 meters. However, altitude sickness can set at a much lower altitude depending on each individual. Oxygen masks must be used according to a person's capability and when they experience moderate altitude sickness. Lower oxygen levels may cause a cascade of ill effects on the body. The climber's breathing increases and he tries to get more oxygen. As oxygen in the muscles decreases, physical activities like climbing become more difficult. Appetite decreases and food also doesn't get absorbed as efficiently. Lack of calories causes further fatigue. Sleeping becomes difficult, which adds to the fatigue. This accumulation of negative effects due to the lack of oxygen further leads to severe altitude sickness and thereby causing death. If you're planning to climb such mountains anytime soon, I advise you to be thoroughly prepared. You may never know what these mountains hold for you. Do you think you can climb these mountains without oxygen masks? What would you do in such a situation? Let us know in the comments.